Should have been Oliver Dowden talking to us today, but of course he has resigned. This is an absolute disaster for the party, isn't it?
It's not been a good evening by any stretch of the imagination. So you heard from Robert there speaking a lot of sense as ever. We've got to reflect. We've got to listen really carefully, and we have to respond. And what we know is that people are going to be concerned in the months and years to come about the cost of living, about inflation pressures. When Robert talked about the next election, you don't win an election. You don't just go up to win an election. You have to actually govern well, and then people reward you for that and your hopes and aspirations for the next period after that. And so we need to prove to people that we do have those answers of how to grow the economy and how to tackle the cost of living issue, which the £37 billion package that the Chancellor's brought in is the first of that. But it's not business as usual. We will reflect, we will listen, and we will respond.
Yeah, someone must take responsibility, is what Oliver Dowden says. Should it be the former chairman of the party? Is it his responsibility?
Well, I mean, Oliver, you know, he's a good man. He's worked really hard in that role. I've known him for a long time, and he's done what he thinks is the right thing. He's organised those by-elections. I know he takes it personally. He's taken a personal decision there. But in terms of taking responsibility, the Prime Minister's always said that the responsibility for all of the things that happen within his government lie within him, and that's why he is going to reflect, why he is going to listen, and he is going to respond. It's now making sure that we can act on behalf of the people under his leadership.
What does he have to do in order to not be the right person for the job?
I think he's the head of a government that at a really crucial time in our economic cycle and our history. This is a guy that, as I say, he's managed to get some big, significant things done, getting that Brexit paralysis that we had unlocked, getting through COVID. He's now facing down the cost of living issue that I've been talking about. And so, you know, it's his brazen approach that's going to come up with those big ideas and boost the confidence in our economy.
Yeah, and yet still, by-election after by-election after by-election after by-election, the British people don't have faith in him.
I think you saw Conservatives in the 1980s lost something like 15 by-elections under Margaret Thatcher and won each of the general elections. And you do that by actually, you know, understanding that by-elections can be, you know, chances for mid-term protest, and it's important that we listen to those protests. Why exactly is it that people are saying, hold on a sec, not business as usual, we want you to respond in accordingly? And that's exactly what we're doing. So we want to make sure that we have not just have the right answers for growing the economy and tackling the cost of living, but we're communicating that with people in Tiverton, Wakefield and other parts of the country of exactly what we are doing to support them.
Losing 2 by-elections on the bounce with 20-odd thousand seat majorities, it's unheard of.
Well, in terms of the numbers in Tiverton, you know, that it was particularly high, but no, it's not unheard of to actually have by-elections that governments are losing mid-term. I talked about the
20-odd thousand
like
though, Mr. Scully.
Yeah, they're big numbers, and this is when you have a party that, you know, the Lib Dems through the kitchen sink at the at Tiverton, they camped down there. You had the Labour Party up in Wakefield with that sort of semi-progressive alliance that's been talked about, so they could divide their efforts in that way. And people felt that they could either stay at home and abstain from this, or make a protest. And that's what we've got to respond to now, and that's what we will respond to now.
Oliver Dowden was an early and ardent supporter of Boris Johnson. June of 2019, writing in the Times newspaper, the Tories are in deep peril. Only Boris Johnson can save us now. He no longer thinks that.
No, Oliver's resigned. I'm not going to, read into his letter what may or may not be there. You know, he's set it out in the way that he wants to. I'm not going to speculate on any further than that. I just thank Oliver for all of the incredible work he's done. And I
don't need to speculate. He's gone.
We'll have to spend some more. No, in
terms of speculation there, though. Is there, Mr. Scully?
No,
he's gone.
I took from your question that you're reading into further about why he's gone. As I say, he's done great work, and I know he'll be back doing other leading roles in the Conservative Party and indeed in the Conservative government. But I come back to the fact that we are now having to reflect, and it's right that we do so, but then come back with a really good positive response for what people are facing now. Because come the next general election, people will vote for what's in their pocket and what they see as their hopes and aspirations for the next few years in terms of the economy in particular. And that's what we've really got to work on.
My point was that he said only Boris Johnson can save us now. He quite obviously now feels that that is not the case, and he no longer wants to serve in his government. So if not him, then whom?
No, that's not what I took from it. I mean, Oliver is the chairman that organises the by-elections, and he's taken up a personal view that he's carried the can for that. I think in reality we all carry the can.
That's not what he says. Not what he says at all, is it?
But we're back to speculating what he said. I mean, if you want to speak to Oliver, speak to Oliver.
We don't need to speculate. It's there in front of us.
Well, he hasn't said anything about the Prime Minister in the letter. He's just said
that's exactly the point.
Someone's taken responsibility. I've taken responsibility as chairman, and he's gone. And I wish him very much all the best. So,
but that's exactly the point, Mr. Scully. He's not said anything about the Prime Minister. He's purposefully said that he remains loyal to the Conservative Party, not the Prime Minister. Normally, you would expect people, when they're going to the backbenchers, to say that they remain loyal to the Prime Minister. He also says somebody must take responsibility, and I have concluded that in these circumstances, it would not be right for me to remain in office. He's not saying that he is taking responsibility, but nobody else is.
Kay, I'll happily talk about what's in the letter. What I can't do is talk about what's not in the letter, and because I can't second guess Oliver or speculate. What people up and down this. I know that we always have these things straight after elections, but what people will have done in Tiverton and Wakefield, they've sent a message clearly to this government, to the Prime Minister, to all of us in government, that they want to see a change in approach and make sure that we can respond to the pressures that they're facing. I think what you'll find, that's why I talked about the communication, because we've already started to change our approach in both in number 10 and making sure that we're way more front-facing in terms of tackling those cost of living issues. We don't always get our message across as effectively as we might, but we need to do more to make sure that we can not just tackle the lowest paid concerns about in particular about the cost of living, but growing the economy as well, because that's the best way of getting us out of this global pressure that we're facing at the moment.
The Lord Barwell, who you will know, and many of our viewers will as well, he was basically the right-hand man for Theresa May when she was Prime Minister. He said on this programme this morning, if you keep Boris Johnson in power, the Conservatives will absolutely lose the next election. Now, why would he be so wrong, do you think, given that he has been at the very seat of power and he knows what it's like?
Because he had the same thing when he was there. A lot of people were saying similar things about Theresa May. I was
she went.
I can't remember if I did Sky News, but I was out defending her, having supported her deals as well.
Not Prime Minister anymore, is she?
But what I'm saying is that Gavin's been through those pressures, and he has his own views. It doesn't mean he's right. I mean, everybody's got a different view within the Conservative Party. What we now need to do is, not have a 3-month psychodrama of leadership campaigns. We need to actually, when we're facing rail strikes and pressures from other unions as well, we want to make sure that we can tackle those so that we don't go into a spiral of inflation that we saw. I'm old enough to remember when that happened in the 70s and 80s. There's a whole generation that don't realise what can happen to an economy quite quickly if you don't get those things right now, in the here and now, over the next 3 months, not in 6 months or 9 months or a year's time.
Sources are telling us this morning on the programme that Boris Johnson was surprised by the resignation of his chairman. How surprised were you?
I was reasonably surprised, but there again, I say I'm in South London, Boris Johnson's in Rwanda, so I haven't been part of those conversations, and I suppose Prime Minister wouldn't have been directly involved. So it's always a shame when someone like Oliver goes, because, as I say, he's a good man. And he's worked and done great things for this government and for the party. And so I know he'll do more things in the future with us and for us. But it's a shame to see him go.
Just looking via the Reuters news agency, Conservative Party source, by-election defeats were partly the result of endless media reporting about parties in Downing Street. Do you support that suggestion that it's the media's fault that the Prime Minister has found himself in this position?
I think there was a side of that people have been chasing the Prime Minister since he was mayor and before. He's always been probably one of the most highly scrutinised politicians in the world, and people have been gunning for him for some time. And so the frustration and the anger, as I've talked to you about on a number of occasions around what happened in number 10 during COVID, was sort of like fed also by some tribalism of people that wanted to attack the Prime Minister and this government, because it's their job to do so, the Labour Party and the Dems, etc. We've always just tried to focus on what we can do, i.e. changing the ethos in number 10 to make sure that can't happen again, to make sure that we can face into the issues of the day, like the cost of living issue.
People have been gunning for the Prime Minister for some time. Why would they do that?
Well, because there's, that's just a sheer probability of statistical numbers. You've got the Labour and the Dems that want to get rid of the Prime Minister because they want to form a government without necessarily having any ideas. So their job specifically is to get rid of the Prime Minister. You get parts of the media who their singular aim is to get rid of the Prime Minister, and that tends to feed a narrative. So I'm not talking about the fact it is the media as a whole that does it, but people do tend to talk about what gets pushed by those people on occasion, because people like to talk about the Westminster Village and what's happening in Westminster rather than the issues that people are facing in Wakefield, in Tiverton, and around the country.
Well, let's talk about that then briefly, shall we? Before we let you go, Mr. Scully, we appreciate you taking the time. We've been in Wakefield, we've been in Tiverton, we've been in several other by-elections over the last few months. And it would appear that all of those people not in the Westminster Village or in that little bubble that you've been talking about don't want the Prime Minister to be there anymore. In fact, quite a lot of your backbenchers don't want him to be there anymore. There's just a few of you who sit around that cabinet table who want the Prime Minister to remain in office. Are you tone deaf?
Well, I think you find there's a majority, actually, when you say there's a few, because that was the whole point of the vote of no confidence. And as you heard from
most of them on the payroll, come on.
But none of
75% of backbenchers wanted him to go.
No, you said there's a few MPs. There's a majority of MPs that have confidence in Boris Johnson. That was what
who were paid by the Prime Minister, by the government, because they have government roles. The 75% of backbenchers wanted him gone.
Okay, if I didn't want the Prime Minister to be in charge, I would resign as a minister, and because I wouldn't then be able to serve in his government clearly. And maybe I'm not going to do this just because of a paycheck or something like that. This is way bigger than me or any individual. This is about the government of this country and having the right Prime Minister. And I still believe that the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is the man for that job. He's been brazen in his approach to get Brexit done.
I understand that, Mr. Scully, and I know I need to let you go. But let me just, my point to you is this. Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I hear that that's what you're saying. However, the majority of other people who are not on the government payroll don't want him in office anymore.
So, if you're talking about the population in Westfield and in Wakefield and Tiverton, then a lot, as you heard from Robert Buckland, a lot of the postal votes were going out during that vote of no confidence. There was a lot of talk in the media and elsewhere that they would have been getting that news of that particular event. We are where we are now. We've got to reflect. It's not business as usual. We've got to make sure that we can respond to what we heard on what was not a good night for the Conservative Party, and make sure that we that we respond positively, to let people see that we do have the answers. We remain with those answers of how to grow the economy and how to support people through these difficult times.
It's great to talk to you. Hopefully we'll see you in person very soon. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Scully. Thank you.
Thanks.